Hey, everybody, you are watching Divorce Happy Hour. I'm your host, Christina Previtt, the CEO and co-owner of New Jersey Divorce Solutions. And my guest today is Julia Dasaro-Drescher. She is an attorney practicing business law, real estate, and family law, and wills and probate. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we were just laughing at that. I think people might have heard you that you shouldn't be trusted with a curling iron. It's okay, right? We're dealing with bigger things in the world.
Yep.
So anyway, what we're going to talk about today is business divorce. So we all know you and I know how to do divorce law. That's what we do. You have other practice areas. That's all we do at New Jersey Divorce Solutions. But there are other contexts that are kind of like a divorce. And one of them is when you're dividing a business. I have not worked in that context, but I'll let you tell us, is it very similar? Because you've done both.
I've done both, and I've also done litigation and mediation where it's an estate, that siblings are arguing over. And, they're really all relatively similar. You can take out the component about parenting time and things like that. But when you get to the financial aspects of it, whether it's a married couple or a business partnership that's breaking up, or siblings that are arguing over something, it really comes down to that same type of, there's emotions, there's financial factors, there are things behind the scenes that at first glance you may not know about. And all of those things happen in a divorce as well. So, the skills really do kind of apply and transfer over to those areas.
So that's saying that a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. I think with the context you're talking about, often it's not a cigar, right? Like they might be saying that they need that bank account, but a lot of times it's not really about that.
Correct. Or it's not even so much a lot of times. So if it's just bank accounts, that gets relatively straightforward and easy. But with businesses, what you have sometimes are people have, they have accounts. They have, depending on the type of business it is, they've got registers and book lists and who should get this account and who should get that account, and who worked on that account, who's got that relationship, who built those relationships.
So what are some of the things that people need to really think about when they're dividing a business? Because if they haven't done it before, it's not just, we're going to decide who keeps what furniture and we're going to call it a day, right?
No, there's all sorts of things. Depending on where the business is at the time it's being divided, if it's active or if it's defunct. If it's active, ongoing accounts, who's going to be responsible for what, who's going to be liable for what, are there orders outstanding, are there invoices outstanding, who has to pay that,
What about clients? Whatever you're doing, if it's a law firm or if it's some other type of business, there are customers.
Correct. And that's like a book of business, accounts. That's kind of what I'm referring to. I've done some flooring businesses, and it's interesting. They have contracts with the bigger vendors such as Lowe's and Home Depot. If you go to Lowe's to buy your flooring, you're not getting an employee of Lowe's that comes and does it. They subcontract it out to these smaller flooring companies. So there's that, who's getting which Lowe's store. And really what's going to happen moving forward. And like I said, especially in some of these smaller companies, you've got people who have been working together for very, sometimes lengthy periods of time, almost in a family type setting. Sometimes they have actual family members working and drawing salaries, and, they're doing all different sorts of things for tax purposes, which are legitimate, but then become, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, my wife was working as the administrator and she was getting a salary of $100,000 a year. And, but was she really, were they showing that on paper? How was that actually working? What's going to happen to her? There's just a lot of different variables that come into play.
So if somebody wanted to go to mediation with you, how would you get that started? What would you want from them at least before you
Well,
even begin?
you would want similar to divorce, the financials of the business. You would want to know what the earnings were for the past few years, what the assets of the business are, what the liabilities of the business are. Um, and like in a divorce, you can bring in a forensic accountant to do business evaluation and see how much the business is actually worth. Um, like you mentioned, the clients, that's almost an unknown variable because, they have a certain level of autonomy as far as being able to choose where they want to go. It's not like, and I hate to say it this way, but it's not like with children where, it's basically one parent or the other,
Yeah.
and both parents for the most part are going to get joint legal custody. But, sometimes when a business is breaking up and the clients don't necessarily want to stay with them at all, they may lose clients just based on the fact that they're having a business breakup. So they're going to lose them to a third party, um,
So
which is
you've done divorce and business divorces.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a lot of the same sort of nonsense that we see in family law?
I
Like
mean,
someone wiping out an account,
oh yeah, that stuff. Absolutely.
turning off the electric or
Absolutely.
whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Certain things aren't there, it's not like somebody's cheating on somebody or there's another person or, whatever the case may be. But that aside, all of those same things can be, this person isn't contributing to the business. They were for a long time. I mean, tell me you haven't heard this in a divorce. My partner used to, go out and get business and was bringing in, this many accounts a week and things were going well. And I don't know what's going on, but all of a sudden, they're not working anymore, or they're not being successful in work anymore. And so I've had to pick up more of the, responsibilities around the business. You could easily substitute in the words, spouse and divorce there, and it's really the same situation.
Yeah. So when you actually conduct the mediation, I mean, what do you find is most effective? Because I know with family law, we don't always just jump right into the business of the mediation. There's like we kind of give people a little time to maybe air some grievances first, and that seems to help them.
Right. And that's similar in the business again, especially when we're talking about small businesses. Large businesses are different. That's not really the types of things I've mediated anyway. But small businesses, couple of partners, sometimes it all mixes all into one big pot, and it's a family held business. And so there's all sorts of issues going on there. Yeah, definitely, you want them to be able to air some grievances, but you want to get, and this is the way I do my family law mediations as well. Let's look at bottom line, what are we actually talking about here? What is at stake? Sometimes everybody's coming in ready to go guns blazing. And at the end of the day, you're not really talking about that much, differential in what the parties want. So, I always look at it as let's try to take what looks to be a big problem and parse it into, several smaller issues and see what we can kind of knock off and get down to what the actual problems are.
How many people do you generally have involved? Because it's a husband and wife, obviously, or two spouses. There's two. we haven't allowed.
But not always. That's not true. I mean, we've had, as well as I do. You've got mediations or divorces where there's parents that are kind of behind the scenes, or.
But the ultimate decision making is with the two litigants. But you could have a business where there's 3 owners or 4 owners. Is that typical?
You've got alliances there. So
you were breaking up a little bit. I didn't hear that last part.
Sometimes you have alliances as far as it's 3 owners against 1 owner, and then that brings in some of the laws regarding closely held corporations and things like that, as far as what can a quorum do, and can they force a buyout, and, things like that.
Do you find that you can resolve these in one session, or do they typically need more than one?
They typically need more than one.
And do they usually have attorneys with them?
Usually, yeah.
Okay.
Especially if it's started out as any kind of litigation, because that there's the rule that corporations can't represent themselves in court. So, there's generally been attorneys involved, and it's not likely that they send, the business attorneys send their clients without counsel.
Yeah, which we do see sometimes in divorce.
Right, we do.
Divorce.
Yep.
So when you wrap it up, what do you do? Or do you do something in terms of drafting? I know in a typical divorce, there'd be a settlement agreement. Is there something similar that you produce for the client?
Sure. There's still type of, and again, it depends. If there's been litigation filed, then you still need some type of a settlement agreement. It's not a marital settlement agreement like we see, or a property settlement agreement, but it's a, agreement of the parties regarding the dissolution of XYZ, XYZ corporation. Or you can do it by way of just consent order if there has been, a docket number in litigation. And a lot of times you see these things are filed in chancery, in the chancery part, which is also where our family law cases are held. So
yes, interesting.
So there might actually be reasons for all of that. It's not just
so
arbitrary.
So if you can talk about some of them, what are the more interesting ones that you've worked on, without obviously revealing anybody's identity?
Right.
What kind of businesses have you worked with?
Well, like I said, you've got some flooring businesses, restaurant owners. It's mostly those types of things. You're kind of smaller,
service,
local. Yep.
And
yeah.
Do you see a common theme with why they're breaking up? You mentioned sometimes there's one person they feel like isn't pulling their weight. Is that generally what the complaint is?
That's a lot of it. Sometimes it's just everybody realizes that they weren't good partners to start out with. And you know what? Sometimes it's not even acrimonious. Sometimes it's just, okay, we're going to go out of business and we need to tie up the loose ends, and we need to know how to do that. But yes, if there is bad blood, so to speak, it is usually one of those, well, I've been doing all the work and I don't get any recognition, and these two are taking all this out, because they're husband and wife, or boyfriend and girlfriend, and I'm the other partner, and I'm not seeing the same kind of results, or same kind of income out of it as they are, even though I'm the one that actually has the expertise to do it.
So I feel like with my divorce clients, sometimes I say, well, have you tried counseling? Did you ever ask them if they've tried counseling?
I've never asked them if they've tried counseling, although one of probably the most contentious ones I had, and this actually I was not the mediator. I actually represented the parties in it. But at the end of the day, the resolution of the litigation, which did go to mediation and, eventually settled, was that they basically agreed to somehow stay in business together. And both myself and my adversary were like, are you guys sure about this? Because at the beginning of this, you all hated each other, and it was pretty definite that you did not want to continue to work together. And then I guess that, similar to sometimes what we see in marriages, at the end of the day, it was a financially better move for all of them to, stay working together to the best of their ability, so that they didn't lose accounts.
Well, I have to start all over. I always say too, even with divorces, that I think a lot of times the problem is that people just they're not communicating. So they don't know what the other one really wants or needs. And there's just this huge disconnect. And rather than working on that piece, they just kind of figure, well, I guess this just isn't a good fit, and get divorced.
Right. And and again, that's similar to, and that, sometimes that can be even magnified in the business world, because, everybody's so focused on their part of the job, so for example, if you've got something where, let's take a flooring business or any type of, contracting business, where the one person is actually going out and installing floors and, doing things like that. And the other person is, staying in, and they're on the phones and they're talking to the Lowe's and the Home Depots and the clients and, all that other stuff. That they're working in two totally different realms, and they might not necessarily appreciate what the other one is doing. So each one starts to think, well, they couldn't do this without me. I'm the floor guy. I install the floors, and the other people say, well, yeah, but I'm the one that is, getting the business, maintaining the business, doing all of that work. So he wouldn't have any floors to install if it wasn't for me. So, it's,
so you can help them
if
they need to resolve the actual closing down of the business, or just dividing it, or perhaps helping them communicate better.
Right. I mean, I can help. I mean, obviously.
Maybe you should be a business therapist.
Definitely help them communicate better and helping them wind down. Yeah.
So
I'm sure such a thing exists somewhere.
There should be a thing like that. Business therapy. They absolutely should be a thing like that. Yes. Maybe that could be your next gig.
And I mean, of course, there's some levels of expertise that, are beyond me. Generally, you always want accountants involved as far as that goes for, tax purposes. If one party is selling their share of the business to another, or relinquishing certain things.
So there's a lot to think about. So if there is an attorney out there that's watching that is interested in using your service, or if there are people watching who have a business and maybe they'd like to try to resolve some things before they retain attorneys, how can they reach out to you?
You froze on me a little bit. I heard it, if there was an attorney out there watching.
Well, I'm having an issue with my internet today, I think. If there's an attorney that's watching that would be interested in using you for your mediation services, or if there are some people that have a business, maybe they need a little help, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Either, through our website email, or to call the office. You can message us via social media if you need to. We keep track of all that. We watch for all those things. So
I have your website there, DasaroLaw.net.
That is it.
All right.
And, we'd be happy to help.
Thank you so much, Julia. I appreciate it. And if anybody is in need of Julia's services, please, maybe you could try to resolve things first with Julia before you decide to throw in the towel.
I'll use a little of that therapy magic.
Yeah, I think you definitely should. All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone who's watching. And thank you also, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, everyone.